The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit one at your right hand and one at your left in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Jesus said, I just have to believe he was laughing like crazy. Jesus said, "The cup that I drink, you will drink. And with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them. And their great ones are tyrants over them. But it's not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." The gospel of our Lord. Please be seated. In the 38th chapter of Job, the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. God, speaking to Job, says, "Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Who comes to the leadership table, but they're dumb as a brick, and their words are not going to grow the organization?" Those are harsh words. Who's invited to the council table, but they bring words without knowledge and without wisdom? It's not the topic that a preacher wants to preach. It's the topic that a consultant wants to go and talk to another congregation about, because you get tarred and feathered when you address this kind of an issue. If you want to lead a group of people and the level of the people are such that they have to befriend each other and always be connected to each other, you will create the best mediocre organization in the world, because you will never upset anyone else. You'll just say what you have to say to make nice. Now, how many of you, honestly, when I ask this, can raise your hand if you are married? Your marriage is nothing like that. And your spouse generally reminds you that it's not like that. It's not just covering your back, but also speaking their mind. Anybody in this place have that kind of a marriage? I'm the only one? Well, thank you. You know, it takes the old people. Yeah, Jean's waving her hand like this. Yeah. There is something about honesty and dishonesty. I've never worried about the people in opposition to what I wanted to bring to St. John's, because I knew you had 200 plus years of history, and I knew that 200 years of history meant this is an aircraft carrier, actually the size of a PT boat, but in people's minds an aircraft carrier, but really quite small, because most of the members had gone. And I knew we'd be up against history. Each one of us are up against our own massive history. I'm up against 65 years of history. From my first original sin, when I blamed Kenny Ditzler for going to the bathroom behind the chair in the living room because no one would take me to the bathroom. Original sin. With my drawers down and the evidence there, I say to my parents looking over the chair and everyone else gathered around, "Bad Kenny Ditzler." That's part of my history. Part of my history is, on my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country, to obey the Scout laws, to keep myself physically strong, mentally straight, morally awake. That's a part of my history. To believe magically that soccer was my best sport, but ended up running cross country because a slick college coach took my application for the soccer team off the desk of the soccer coach. They shared an office, and I ended up running cross country, a sport I never ran in high school because we didn't have a cross country team. Part of my history is I went to seminary, to what I believe to be the strongest academic evangelical of the smart kind in the United States, in Boston, Massachusetts. And some of you know the clergy that went there, like Tim Keller. They are teachers born out of an education that requires you to learn the original languages, not just what current social issue is going to distort the picture and somehow move you away. And those things keep us in line. All I have to do to upset a population in Berks County is to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we'll already have people say, and that's all they have to say, right? But do I think they know what they're talking about? Probably not. Do I think that when you use the term Christian nationalism, people actually know what that is? Do I think that it matters that we can say and admit we are lying to you because it's a way to get your attention? Do I think that matters? But that don't preach well, folks. That's best to keep it in your back pocket and sit on it, because you know you don't want to stir up the people and their beliefs, because they know more. So what does a preacher do when you have this text? When you have James and John saying, hey, Lord, it's about time, and we know you're going to come into a role of authority and power that we've never seen, and we've seen you do some pretty amazing things. Can we sit close to you? And Jesus says, do you have a clue? Now, if you ask the people that have sat closest to me in this congregation in the past 10 years, you will hear them say, I believe many of them would say, we trust Pastor Bob. We believe the message he is bringing is not his message, but a message from the Lord. But you know what it's like to sit next to you, Bob? We too sit under the fire. And the arrows that you experience, we too experience the arrows. We too. And that's what Pastor Appreciation Sunday was for me last week. It was the blessing of being installed as your pastor 10 years after the fact. Because I knew last week you were really affirming yourselves, finally. And that's a really big deal. I never worry about the people in opposition to me because I know where they are. I worry about the sneaky ones that never say a word. I worry about the ones that don't have courage, fortitude, and maturity. I worry about them for the sake of the organization, because institutional health does not fall or survive on polarized positions. Institutions crumble, people crumble when it's a house divided and it's insidious, subversive, and quiet. Those are people that I call spiritual weasels, because they get in there and they eat what's not theirs. And they invade territory that they should not be, where they should not be. This text today, James and John were dumb as bricks. But you got to give them credit. At least they wanted the power. They wanted to have influence. They just were never going to be able to handle it. You have done some spectacular work in recent years. You introduced leaders' messages on Mondays during a pandemic. You never missed a service during a global pandemic. You never stopped. You immediately went not just to television, thank God, not just PCTV, where you can gladly watch us in a snowstorm, But you can watch on YouTube in much higher resolution. And many of our people have now shifted, and they're watching us on YouTube because it's a better picture. That's what this equipment's been trained to do. The television station, on the other hand, doesn't have the bandwidth because they're not a major network. It's just a truthful thing. The handbells we're going to play in a couple weeks, next week. They go to the bottom of the barrel to find people that are going to ring. They do. I'm going to ring. They went to the absolute bottom of the barrel. And they put me between Amanda East and Melissa Geary. Not just to help me, but to keep me in line. I know that, and you know that too. But you know what? When you listen next week, you're going to see that. And while it may not sound, coming off of my bells, perfect, you'll know that there's a commitment to make a joyful noise. And in doing so, Amanda and Melissa and our director, Jen Schlegel. I was going to call you Jen Smith. I buried Jen Smith. No, we're not working on that. For whom the bell will toll, or I don't know. So if you're catching this at all, I was with a bunch of kids yesterday. I wasn't going to go because I've been sick for a week. I don't have COVID, and most of you won't worry about that anyway. But I watched one of our senior boys say to a lower level, what do you call the first 2 years of high school? Underclassmen, yeah, never. Those people, a young lady. Well, you know, Evan and James and I we think of you as our little sister. What do you think that little kid thought when Miles, the senior in high school, the third-degree black belt, the quiet gentleman, what do you think that kid thought? Pretty special, right? And her face, it just lit up. That's this passage. Miles did the passage. Don't think more highly of yourself than others. Think of yourself in your appropriate role. Know who the real authority is, the Spirit at work in his life, and through his personality that's been trained and shaped to be disciplined, to not talk back. You'll have to talk to Mike and Shannon about that. But not to do that, but to protect and to, of his own words, what do you think it took a senior boy? You know, senior boys are the equivalent of what? 4th grade maturity? So a senior, what do you think it took him to say, we treat you? Well, first of all, he diluted it, right? We, not I. We treat you like our little sister. What would it feel like if somebody for whom you had respect said, I will treat you like my little sister? That'd feel pretty good? Yeah. You want to tell your grandfather that? In our text today, to move it to the much more serious stuff real quickly, it's about death and resurrection. And it's about the death and resurrection of Jesus as it relates to power. Because not by power, not by might, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. It was the Spirit at work. When Ashley Gear and her friends in youth and government said, let's do our service hours and not beg, but ask, how can we help? And it was the Spirit at work when the community leaders didn't say, well, we need someone to pick up trash or we need someone to clean the toilets, but rather, we should train these people who want to be leaders how to be leaders. We should train them how to serve others. We should train them what we know about finance, what we know about planning. Ashley, you are responsible for that along with your cohorts, your co-companions, those co-monsters that are a part of youth and government. And I'm thankful that you're a member of this congregation and that you have experienced in the work we do around here, what you will take wherever you go in your future years, and that this congregation can thank God for that. Somehow we get to be connected. Jesus, because of his boundary-breaking ministry, had to die. Jesus, because the people who had power had to die because that was the only way they could protect their own jobs. It was the only way they could protect themselves and their prerogatives. How many of you see that at work? Where you are at work, or where you were at work, or in small group organizations, how many of you see people just simply protect their own turf, their own territory, rather than expand and look for the better good? The joke is we argue over the flavor of Kool-Aid, or how many people are going to make Jell-O molds for the potluck supper. But the story is so true even today. So this passage requires us to look in a mirror and see where we are using and exhibiting and exploiting power, where we are roadblocks. The roadblocks in this church are no different than the roadblocks in every church. You always look for the people who say, yes, we want change, but stab you in the back with silence or gossip. Every single place that I will ever work, have ever worked, have ever coached, have ever consulted, that's what you look for. So if you're one that talks out loud, you know you're off the hook. But if you're a silent one, you know I got your number. And that's all you really need to know, because that's the beginning of a changing point. When you're with the girls, they know just by your eyes if they've done well or not, right? You can steer them. Can I do this? Can I ask her? Can mom, just by a glance, tell you if you're a good girl or, uh-oh, I'm in trouble? But grandma never does that. No. It just takes that. See, these are relationships. And churches, every organization knows how this works. They just don't talk about it. But we do here. Why? Because whether I'm here or gone, it's up to you how you'll do it in the future. It's up to you how you will take the seeds that have been planted and grow them or extinguish them. It's up to you. It'll be up to you. Did you see our schedule for the next 2 months? I looked at our schedule against, I think maybe it was four of our top 10 Lutheran churches in the whole country. I looked at their calendar for the next 2 months, and I looked at ours. How is it that you think you can pull off more than some of those big churches with only 75 people? How do you think you can do that? Your schedule is busier than theirs. How do you think you can pull that off? Not by power, not by might, but because God seems to have emerged in your midst, whether you were going with the flow or fighting the flow. God has emerged in your midst. I'm watching text messages go back and forth. Finally, we're a congregation providing care for each other the way people caring for people was designed. It wasn't hierarchical. I tell you, then you do whatever. It's we just do, but we communicate, so it's not, ooh, I was the one that brought the cookies. I get the pat in the back. No, it's we are doing this work together. And that's the key James and John couldn't quite figure out. It's about the team. And no one stands out, and no one shines alone. We all shine, or not, together. Terry, how you feeling? You feeling good? How you feeling, Bill? All right. After 90, hey, anything's good, right? Got another day. Yeah. So of all the lessons you've learned in 10 years, what's the most important lesson? Do you remember what you said years ago? When Pastor Bob came here, I thought we were supposed to fill these pews. And the lesson he learned was, it's not about how many, it's the depth and sincerity and teamwork that makes the world a difference. That's why Jesus didn't appoint 200 disciples. He called 12 apostles. And even then, if you look at his pick, he didn't do so hot. Chris, what's up? I'm doing great. Seriously. Haircut? Are you talking about yours or you talking about mine? He did it. Well, I think he did a really good job. What do you think? Terry, good haircut? No. Terry, this guy right here in the blue shirt, he's checking out your haircut. He wants to get the furniture polish out. There's only one last piece. There's only one last piece I need to share. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. Now that may sound familiar to you, but parse it for a second. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. And then it flips right into, and he gave his life a ransom for many. If you knew that being a servant meant giving your life, would you do it? Service is sacrifice. Always. It doesn't fit the healthy metric of a 35-hour work week. It fits working together so that everyone provides care for others. My favorite part of last week came down to the very end. I could resign my call just on this alone. All it took was a little 10-year-old and a little 8-year-old, a 10-year-old discipling an 8-year-old, and in the end, high five. That's community. That's the congregation that will do great things for the Lord. And sometimes for the world, not so much. And it was right on the heels of that. How do you do this? I came off of last Sunday probably higher than I've ever felt in 10 years because of the work you did. It was so cool because it wasn't about me and my mind. And I hope you really hear that. It was really about you. Good, bad, and whatever. It was all about you. And then in the middle of the week, someone said to me, 50% of the people in Boyertown hated you when you came here. Now, those are pretty strong words. Do you think that? Like if I said, man, I hate Ron. Bunny, what would you think? Besides that, I'm an absolute idiot. That we don't know him, right? Yeah. And 10 years later, this past week, a person actually said to me, they said, when you came here, 50% of the people hated you. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, why would you say that? Because nobody says a comment like that unless you're trying to hurt someone, I'm assuming. And then they went on and they said, and they still do. And that person has the title of Citizen of the Year. Amen. Past Citizen of the Year.